All right, let's talk about things that we did today in the summit. First off, and I will throw this out to Stephen, Michael, or Nez. Um, did you learn anything? Pick up any new tips or tricks that you didn't already know? I mean, y'all are experts in your own right. You do business or education or law enforcement. What did you pick up new today?
I think my favorite takeaway from today was the OSINT Combine presentation on scraping JavaScript. I was taking notes, and then after about 20 minutes, thought that I'm going to be watching this again and again and again. It's something I'm not particularly skilled at doing, that kind of stuff. So to see someone who is good doing it, that'll be one I go through several times. I think it is really, really good, very challenging.
Yeah, I usually with Chris Poulter's things, from whether it was his scraping engagement from all the different platforms last year or some of his other things, I usually have to watch it like 3 or 4 times, digest it, take the notes.
Stuff, but you need to
Yeah,
definitely understand it and do it.
yeah. Michael, thoughts?
Yeah, I really liked his presentation as well. I thought that was very, very. It was a high technical bar that I want to get into, but I really liked Matthias's talk yesterday about the mobile applications and some of the stuff that we've been doing for a while. But he kind of expanded upon a lot of that stuff, not just logging a phone number with a Gray Motion VM app, whatever, and then seeing who comes back to play. I always listen to Matthias. I think he's got a real strong case in regards to mobile applications. Some of the other stuff he does, it just blows my mind with his stuff.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I really loved about all of the talks here was that they were tools and techniques that people could absolutely just apply right away. There, it wasn't that we were pitching $10,000 tools or anything like that. It was that we're showing you techniques that you can just turn right around and use. Inesh, did you have ideas or thoughts?
Yeah, I really like Nico's presentation on Haters Gonna Hate. We have at university, actually, we're applying for a program now. Speak and the idea of a lexicon and how you kind of get a grasp on a movement by building like hashtags and understanding like how they communicate, what are the main agents, what are the main keywords that they're using. That's really interesting. Also in disinformation with movements like showing up. So that was really, really, and in terms of process, Nico's really good explaining like his mental process and how he's like getting to certain conclusions. And it's really, I learned a lot.
Excellent. Cool. Thank you. So we do have some other questions from the attendees. One of them deals with collaboration. Now, if you were here just a little while ago, John and I looked at the OSINT Summit survey that we put out, and most people said that they were doing OSINT by themselves, but many of them did say that they did some collaboration. I would love to know from you three, do you collaborate with others when you do OSINT? If so, and if you're allowed to share it, are there collaboration platforms that you've used or techniques that have been helpful?
I do collaborative work. I work by myself quite a lot. I have done in the past. These days, I tend to collaborate more with one of our other panelists here. Yeah, but in terms of tools for collaboration, actually nothing more than cloud documents to record what you've done, what you need to do, those little analytical things about what's gone before, what we're trying to achieve, and what comes next, documenting that kind of stuff. I think when you're working with people, documenting the steps you've taken and what still needs to be done and who is going to do what is really, really important.
Okay.
Yeah, I have collaborated with a lot of people. Some local to my like SecKC and hacker groups and stuff like that out here, whatever. So some of that stuff is like whiteboard stuff. But even when you're collaborating across the internet, using Slack has always been very helpful. Google Drive tends to be something that we use a lot, just because it's a focused collaborative platform where you can go through and add a lot of stuff, and it's all, as long as you have access to it, it's all fairly benign. Yeah, the collaboration, especially with like the trace lab stuff, anytime you're in a CTF type environment, or you're cranking on something that has multiple players in it, there are things you have to set up before that so that you have that aspect of collaboration. Otherwise, it can get kind of dirty during the middle of it, and you lose things, and that's never a good thing when you're conducting OSINT on anything. So yeah.
Yeah, it definitely can get confusing with a lot of the data, especially when you're multiple people and duplication. Ines, did you have ideas about this?
Yeah, I was thinking that I don't want to go off topic, but we're thinking about like people like OSINT experts collaborating in some research, right? And I think that people sometimes tend to forget how useful OSINT can be as one person doing OSINT collaborating with other people doing like other kind of research. And I've seen in the hallways a lot of people asking about like jobs, and of course my experience is limited, but I would say that besides the industry, like the OSINT job offer, there's a lot of companies that actually could use an OSINT expert, but they just don't know that they need it, like in human resources or marketing, or actually like I have a genealogy company. So if you think about it, like just probably everywhere, every medium, big sized company could use an OSINT expert. And having worked on a team with several people, like in law enforcement, where every one of us had, like we had a good photographer, we had one with undercover, we had one with language, and we all together made these amazing operations. I would say that one of the major advantages of being like good with OSINT is that you can help other structures to get really better and more effective in a lot of work processes. So I think that's also like a way forward, because if we're all like just in our own bubble, then we tend to forget how useful we can be to other industries and other areas besides like InfoSec, which is usually the area where you see it the most.
All right. Now, I want to change topics here. We have a flood of questions coming in the panel channel. I would like to start with Inej here, because I have a feeling that you might have a really interesting thing here. So one of the questions was, what is the weirdest evidence or weirdest thing that you've discovered as far as OSINT? Now, I know, Inej, you've done law enforcement in the past. You've also, as you just mentioned, done the genealogy. And I would imagine that maybe with some of the genealogy open source intelligence you've done, or even in law enforcement, if you can talk about it, there must have been something that was like weird or interesting. Can you think of anything on the spot?
Well, now in genealogy, what tends to happen sometimes is that we find really bad things about people's ancestors.
Uh-oh.
Their cousin and then murdered her or something like that, which is always a challenge because we'll find this in like old newspapers. Everything's online nowadays. And then you have to wonder, like, should I tell him? Should I not? And I also remember in terms of work in law enforcement about a case of a gentleman that was constantly looking down. And he was like, oh, everyone, surveillance, like, what is wrong with this man? Like constantly looking down, and all these like conspiracy theories. And in the end, through OSINT, we found him in a forum for foot fetish. So actually, it was summer and ladies were going by him with sandals and he couldn't help himself. So he was constantly like stopping and having this weird behavior going like, so yes, sometimes you will find the weirdest stories. But actually in this case, OSINT was an explanation for very weird behavior.
All right. All right. Hey, TerBush, you've been pretty quiet over there. Anything interesting that you want to add?
Yeah, I've run into some weird stuff. I don't know if any of the weirder stuff is safe to talk about really, but I think some of the
private investigator work for years and years too.
Yeah,
so
things are the ones where you're wondering sort of what is going on here, right? And sometimes you just don't ever quite figure it out, and then sometimes you do. Like I remember, doing surveillance with a big team of guys, like 3 or 4 different cars, and the person we're following is cutting around a neighborhood in a way that you would be almost certain they were onto you, right? They were backtracking and doing other weird things. And then later we figure out they were just lost, you know. So it's those sort of things that sometimes pop in and you're like, oh, okay, that are always pretty interesting.
Yep. And explainable. It means as long as you have enough data. Stephen, Michael, you have a story to share, or do you want to move on? You can pass. It's okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a good story, but given my background, pretty much all my weird OSINT stories are not safe for work or for conference or for life.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for putting that.
For mental health. Yeah.
I don't
Okay,
want to
so
have nightmares.
2 passes. All right, great. So let's talk about this. One of the people in our Slack asked about passion, asked about what is an OSINT technique, an OSINT thing that you are passionate about, or that you are just interested in. Let's just take that word passion and take out the emotionality. What do you love doing in OSINT right now? And I'll couple with it, what do you want to learn and get better at? Who would like to start? Not Michael.
I'll start. Yeah, that's fine. So a lot of the focus that I've been doing for the last year is corporate investigation, and it's been a lot of fun because it has so many different areas of getting off into the weeds and stuff like that. So that's been something that I've really enjoyed. Something I want to learn is that JavaScript technique, though. Like it seems, because I've always sure JavaScript is one of those languages that's something that does read a little bit better than Python, and so it may be a little bit easier. I have no clue, but yeah, I'm excited to try some of those. I did try some of Cinwendy's bookmark techniques for username enumeration, some of the other stuff, whatever, and I thought that was brilliant. So anything that with that stuff is also a little bit easier because it is browser based. So getting it into the hands of other people that have not as much command line experience, it makes it more approachable. The bar of entry is a little bit lower. So I think that stuff is neat.
Yeah, excellent. Inesh, Stephen?
Yeah, I think really, I'm thinking more recently about how I present what I find. And I'm really into, like, I mean, I've always been interested in geolocation, but some of these maps that you see people in the OSINT world produce that are really full of data, like things like, I mean, like COVID visualization, or where there's been an airstrike or an earthquake. And some of these great interactive maps are way easier to understand things with than, say, a written report. And that I would like to find a way to produce these data-rich maps. That's what I'm thinking about at the moment. I think it's a great presentation tool.
And what do you like doing within OSINT?
What do I like doing? I just love being nosy.
All right. All right.
People, places, infrastructure, like finding, and that's always been the way, like finding the things that don't want to be found, or trying to think, find the things that no one else has thought of, where they think they're safe but they're not. And, well, yeah, just being there and trying to find out stuff. It's a really simple answer, but that's what keeps me coming back.
Well, and that was actually one of the other questions that was asked in the Slack was, what is one of those things that when you find it, you're like, yeah, or gets you excited? And I think for many of us, it is that, pulling that investigative thread of following this to that and making the correct pivots in our investigations. And then finding, maybe not the answer, but finding that aha moment. I remember one time, and I tell the story in my class, that I was investigating a high value target, and they had it was on their Facebook. I was looking, and it was a picture of them and their spouse and their adult children. But then on their Instagram, they had a picture of them and a totally different woman, totally different kids, and the kids were younger. And young Micah was like, "Oh my gosh, this person's cheating. They have a dual life." And then I did some more work and found out these were his sister's kids and his nieces and nephews. I'm like, oh, okay, well, that explains it all. And so, following the process, learning things. And yeah, I mean, sometimes you get that aha, but sometimes that aha is, it wasn't what I thought. Inesh, I want to give you time to share your thoughts here too. Something that you want to learn and something that you love doing in OSINT.
Well, I definitely want to learn more about automating processes and making things faster. And especially, even if technically I can't develop to the point that I can do it on my own, to understand more or less that I can help with the architecture and the thought behind it. So that I can work with someone that's maybe not from OSINT, but explain them better exactly what I want to do. And to do that, you need to understand like the process. I've actually become quite passionate about the genealogy thing. It was something I started completely as a hobby, and it's now become like a company. Would say that most people who like OSINT will also like it because it's exactly the same thought process. So you have like selectors that are identifiable, like a birth date, or selectors like they were in the army, or they were born somewhere in this country, or they used to work in a bakery. And then you start using that and you start thinking about, okay, where can I search next? Like what is, and actually it's something that genealogy has this, it's mostly like 99% on deep web. So you will have to think that there's like somewhere an archive on the army, or there's an archive on the bakery stores. But once you find it, it's exactly the same rush, because you go like, oh my God, I got him. He's here. And his wife, and I have his kids.
Well,
and you find the picture and
I have a follow-up question for you, Nesh. Before, John, I haven't forgotten about you and what you want to learn and so you keep thinking. But Nesh, you touched upon the fact, and this was one of our questions in the Slack too, about using closed sources. Because I know that a lot of the genealogy sites, or some genealogy sites, if you pay them, then you have access to the digitized documents from this or that or the other. I was on there one time looking at the digitized manifest of the ship that brought my grandparents over from Germany. And I mean, that's fabulous. So let me ask you and Nesh this, and then we'll go to John. Do you use closed sources as well for your open source intelligence investigations?
Yes, definitely. And there's like this entire world for OSINT, and I'm pretty sure we're going to do something on OSINT Curious soon about this in genealogy websites. A lot of data, and especially for social engineering. If you want to start a conversation, you want to know something about the person's past, you'd be surprised about how open people are when you're talking about their ancestors. Like, I'm a cousin, we have the same great grandparent. And people will be very, 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 usually they will share things. And yes, it's a very collaborative community, just like OSINT actually.
Insecure, collaborative, sharing things that probably, yeah, okay.
Yes.
All right, I want to give my co-chair here time. John, what do you like doing in OSINT, and what are you looking to learn?
I think like Nix, I really am just a nosy person. I like to learn things, especially things that I think maybe no one else knows or has figured out. Certainly if it's something that is valuable, that has something relevant to a client or something like that, or maybe others that can be helped by that data, like that is great. I love doing that. Just that curiosity, and like Inez says, with genealogy and things like that, that kind of flows over into other areas as well, not just professionally, but those things are also very interesting to me. The things I think I mentioned this yesterday, I definitely want to up my game a little bit as far as scripting and coding, both for OSINT as well as like writing decoders for files, doing reverse engineering and things like that.
Nice. Well, and here's one of the things I do want to throw out. There's a big push over in the Slack for me to ask you questions about emerging technology. So I will bundle that along with this comment. So in the conference here, I know that I have been exposed to so many new concepts, and they might not be emergent technologies like facial recognition, or I don't know if y'all caught the Unreal Engine meta-human faces now that look ultra real, but not quite real enough. I mean, a lot of these things are evolving, and they are influencing the OSINT world and what people are doing. So I guess my question to you, and one of the questions from the Slack is, how do you keep up with the emerging technologies that are out there and in their intersection with the world of OSINT? Tough question.
I know.
Oh no, go ahead.
No. Next, you go.
No, you go.
Okay.
No, you go. I'm afraid he's going to take my answer though, so
I think first of all, in terms of keeping up with stuff, it's to set out with a mindset that you're not going to try and understand everything, because it's like trying to, I get most of my OSINT news about new technology and tools from Twitter, and not even without looking at any other platform, just to keep up with what's happening in the world of technology on Twitter. It's like trying to drink from like a fire hose, isn't it? So I tend to sort of dip into things and see which technologies become a bit more established over time, and prioritize ones which I think will be useful to me necessarily, rather than understand everything. I'd say that the you just mentioned it, but I forgot the name of it now. The new program for generating fake people pictures and things like that. So that's of huge interest to me. So I'll follow that up. But yeah, I find it easier to try and understand the things that will relate directly to my own field rather than everything. Otherwise, you just never get off Twitter.
Okay. All right, Michael.
Very true. You never escape Twitter's fire hose. It's I have in the same vein that TechNazet and Hatless and a lot of other people over, I've started a Start Me page that's private to me. Anything that I see, I try to go through and copy and put it in there. I try to go through and dedicate at least 4 hours a week to going back and just looking through that stuff so that I can kind of review that and see if it does make sense to go through and to spend more time, because we have a finite amount of all of that or whatever. But that's how I try to conquer it, is I will see something new. And if I see it a couple different times coming up, then I know that it's kind of caught on. So the wildfire, it's gone viral thing, whatever. So there are some crazy stuff. And with some of the things that I'm playing with personally in regards to open source intelligence and trying to create, real payoff for some of these tools and stuff like that. I judge these as kind of return on, either my time or my money in regards to what helps with a lot of that stuff, whatever. And that's somewhat of the delineator right now is, will it help automate or bring in more stuff? Or is this something that will flesh itself out and it can create a business line or something else like that over? So.
Yeah, that's a terrific point, Michael, that there are some things that you are going to probably investigate or try out just because it looks whiz bang and cool, like all the cool kids are, right? But there's other things where you're like, okay, well, that was neat. I tried it. I'm aware of it, but this is going to be what I need to learn because it's going to help me in my work or in my volunteer or my nonprofit work or whatever it is. That's an excellent point, man. Excellent. Inesh, John, thoughts? Emerging technologies, and how do we keep up with them?
Well, it's definitely things that you need to pay attention to, just like all the other changes with social networks and things like that. Certainly it varies depending on what kind of work you're doing. If you're doing like blue team footprinting of your organization, the fact that more and more Internet of Things devices are coming online is very relevant. That may be less relevant if you're just investigating random people in a divorce case or something like that. Then again, those things might come up. Maybe they have some webcams outside their house that are wide open, So the more people connect things online, certainly if they do it poorly and don't require any authentication, the more information is out there that potentially can be gathered and accessed.
Yeah. Inesh?
Yeah, I think it depends also. You can see that on one side, which is how can we use these emerging technologies to collect more things. But usually I'm on the side, and also because I do disinformation research, of thinking, how can this be used on the other side? So when we're talking about AI, and we talked a lot about deep fakes, and then it's more a question of putting yourself on the other side's shoes and thinking, okay, what is coming up now? What is new now that can be used, and we're not like actually ready for that? I do think that InfoSec is probably one of the industries, because of the concept of red teaming, and I've written a couple of things about this, where actually the industry is working well, thinking like, okay, anticipating what can come next. And there's this culture of like testing and putting yourself on the other's shoes. But in law enforcement, this doesn't exist, right? So you have to have, like, unfortunately, like the planes against the towers for people to start thinking about that as a danger. And with this information now, for example, I can see that clearly, that now, for example, for the elections, there was a lot of concern about this the same things happening again that happened in 2016, when probably the danger came from like new platforms or came from messaging platforms or from other ways. So I think it's really important that we keep up to these emerging technologies, also to understand that they can be used for good, but also for bad things.
Yeah, and you hit it right on the head there, where we have to stay up on these things because the world changes, and whereas in many industries like penetration testing, blue teaming, classic cyber and things, they have to keep up with things because much like what you probably found and Nick's found in law enforcement, the people that are doing the bad things to good people, they're constantly evolving their craft. So our craft needs to also evolve. And so one of the things that Nico, Dutch OSINT guy, he talked about probably in an OSINT Curious thing, was that when a new platform comes out, whether it's Parlay or Gab or whatever, he'll go ahead and sign up for an account on it, a research account, sock puppet account, fake account. He'll sign up for an account just to understand the platform and the possibility for OSINT collection off of that platform. What is public? What is private? How do you interact with things? And again, just like what you were saying in this, it's that I'm going to try it out because I might need to be over here, and I might need to gather that information.
I
John.
think another good takeaway from what Inez was just saying is always keeping in mind the fact that these technologies and other things, it's a double-edged sword, right? I, as an investigator, can access this information, but maybe that's like a privacy fail on the part of the person I'm investigating, right? Someone just brought up the genealogy thing and how you can have your DNA tested. Well, if you put that in a public platform where people can access that DNA, like criminal investigators, they can find your Uncle Bill who did something 20 years ago. Maybe you don't want to do that. I'm not saying don't do that, but realize there are different ways to go at all of these technologies and all of these things.
And the other thing with like even the Wall Street bets stuff, whatever, not to get political or anything else like that, like they're doing a very, very solid job of sticking it to the man type stuff, whatever. But, conversely, looking at that and saying, okay, that's a new attack path for, influence campaigns. Like if you can get enough people to go through and to short or pump and dump something, whatever, then they've built their equity up enough to go through and to purchase more Facebook ads and do more disinformation, things like that, or whatever. So seeing things that are out in the wild, whatever, that are not cybery, but financials are always going to be something that we need to go through and investigate, just because that's where the money is. And what's the saying? Follow the money. So there are paths to that as a threat vector for what we look to defend. So yeah, there are kind of the opposite of what John's saying. We don't want to expose ourselves OPSEC and all that, but we do need to be cognizant of what's out there and happening in the world as well, and how it can be turned against the right side to the wrong side type stuff.
I'm glad you brought up the right side and the wrong side, Michael, because Griffin, Hatless Wonder, who's an amazing OSINTer, has his own Start Me page that is the ultimate OSINT page, has a great resource. He had a question in the Slack, and I'm going to just go ahead and call it out. So the question becomes, how do you four, us five, how do we balance I'm going to disseminate this information because it's good for the OSINT community and it's good for the good people to learn, versus reconciling the fact that, well, some bad people are going to be watching and reading and listening to that as well. How do you reconcile that? Are there some things, and I know, John, you and I, we answered this yesterday, but the question is, are there things that you hold back so you're not sharing everything publicly? Or tell the world.
Yeah, transparency is an amazing thing, but when you're too transparent, then you can go through and start to educate the bad apples and stuff. And this works also in like the corporate or the nonprofit space as well. If you have breach data and people are in specific breaches and stuff, we kind of made it a policy to go through and release one or the other. You release the email or you release the password. You don't put them both together, because then you're not trying to get people fired, but at the same time, you still want to go through and educate the masses in regards to where and how this threat came. But it is tough. My motto for the last, since 2014, when I switched from physical stuff to cybery stuff was, you know, attack to defend. Let's get all the information out there so we know what it is. But there's just such an overwhelming wave of people to go through and teach that not everyone catches it. Like it still astounds me that like I can know something that like Micah or Nick or you know, or Steven or somebody else like might not know about, but that's just the reality of knowledge and where your environment is. So, you know, when you start to teach other people about stuff, it can help people, but it can also go through and be that causeway to bad stuff. So I still think transparency is the best way to go through and do it. I still think even holding it back until, you know, like responsible disclosure, if you know that there's a way to go through and patch it, or if there's a way to go through and say, hey, this is how I mitigate it, but this was the problem. You know, I think that's the best way, but even saying that, that's not the cure all. You know, it's yeah, so.
Okay. Stephen, you had your microphone unmuted. I'm going to call you out.
Yeah, this is a really challenging subject, and I still feel conflicted about it. But the way I thought about it is what we're doing is open source stuff. We're not penetration testers. We're not using signals intelligence. We're not putting malware on people's phones to find out what they're up to. If our techniques are truly open source techniques, then anyone else should be able to see what we've done and take the same steps and get the same results, if that makes sense. So if I disclose a particular technique that I come across, I don't feel like I'm blowing, even if I'm the first one to discover it, which is quite unlikely, let's face it, because there are so many people in this field. I don't feel like you're sort of blowing the lid off anything secret or confidential. If I disclosed how phones got tapped, for example, that would be serious. Or if I disclosed information about a client that was particular to them, absolutely. But general open source techniques, new ones, I don't worry about showing them too much because they're kind of out there already, if that makes sense.
Well, and also I think that you've tuned your mind to the fact that the techniques that we know right now are transient, right? They will expire. They will get fixed. I mean, face it, in the OSINT world, we're looking for, I think, John, you just mentioned it, the places where people are leaking privacy data or platforms are leaking privacy data. And so we get in there, we do what we need to do for our cases, and we get out. And eventually, those platforms might get a little bit more secure. And eventually, those features that we depended upon for years to harvest data from some platform, they go away. And I think if we go into this expecting that to happen and expecting to have to learn and challenge ourselves to try new techniques, then when it happens, it's just another day at the office. All right, so we are now out of time, but before we go, I do want to say thank you to you three for sticking around. I know two of you are European time and you're giving up your nighttime hours and time away from your family. So thank you, Nick, Stephen, and Nesh for sticking around and being here and providing input. Nesh, there are lots of people that are looking to connect with you about genealogy over in the Slack. So definitely head over there.
Yeah, we definitely want to say thank you to not just you guys, but all the speakers who joined us for the summit, both today and yesterday. I thought we had some fantastic presentations. I learned something from everyone here, and we're really appreciative of all the speakers that came and were giving of their time to share this information with everybody else. I also want to give thanks.
Hang on one second, John. Yeah. Stephen, Michael, and Ash, if you want to just go ahead and drop out, head over to the Slack and chat up those last people, or head out if you need to go to bed. That's cool too.
Let me just say thank you and give you like congratulations.
Yeah,
it was really well organized.
Yeah, this has been brilliant.
Thank you to everyone at SANS because it's not that easy. And I think probably everyone that's out there in the hallways on Slack feels exactly the same.
And the advisory board people, anyone behind there. Yeah.
Yeah. Congrats to everyone. That it was really, really, really amazing. Thank you. Bye-bye.
This is the third year, is that right?
That's right. This is
year 3. This is amazing. John, you did an absolutely amazing job with all the people. Micah, as always, really good, and everyone else who brought something else to the table. I just want to say thank you because this is information that I like, but I love this event too. I was at the first one, and I'll be at the last one. So yeah, it's awesome.
Thanks,
guys. Thank you, Michael. Thanks, everybody.